This is Adam Watson.
Robert Diaz.
Levon Baker.
You're listening to the Darkslinger Mafia podcast. So tonight we're going to be talking about distribution, prices to a degree, and where you guys hear about various things.
Sounds
All right.
good.
So, describe the comic market for me when you guys were younger.
When I was younger,
Yeah, like where did you see comics? Where were you exposed to them? And go ahead and say your ages, just because, you know.
I'm 26, and I didn't really find comics when I was a kid.
Okay.
I didn't go searching for them,
True, but
also, I don't remember seeing them. I might have seen them because you said Century used to sell them.
they did, but let's see, when I was 14, I'm 12 years older than you, you were only 2. So
they might have changed.
they probably still had them when you were like 6 or 7. But unless your parents went to the magazine section, there's no real reason that you'd see that, you know?
Well, I never really found them. I remember kind of seeing them, I think, in like those beach town stores, like the little thrift shops that every beach town has.
So you're talking like the antique malls?
Yeah, I think I probably would have seen them there.
Uh-huh.
But it wasn't something I was ever exposed to. I never really thought about it. Even if I saw it, I didn't really think to pick it up.
Antique malls would be they're kind of a weird thing to buy them at, too. I bought them at antique malls when I was a kid because I bought them wherever I could find them. But it was always really weird because, you'd have to go through the pile to find something that was decently priced. It'd be like 20 comics that you knew you could get at a convention for 50 cents a piece that they were selling for like $5 each.
Yeah, those places.
And in your head,
suck.
you can kind of check in your head and be like, that's $1.50 at the comic shop near me. Why am I going to spend $3.50 more just because I'm at the beach and this is an antique mall? But that's the way antique malls work. So.
But, I never really read much as a child.
Okay.
So that probably had something to do with it.
Maybe.
But it was a combo. A lack of having
Although
them
it could be
around.
argued that having comics in your life as a kid encourages kids to be readers as adults.
Could be. I turned into more of a reader later on when I actually
I don't know
chose to.
much about like the hip hop that was released in your guys' era. I know more about the stuff that was released in my era, but I know a shit ton of the hip hop artists from when I was a kid were comic fans, who a lot of even have names and personalities that are direct results of Marvel or DC comics that are so inspired by comics because that's the thing that taught them how to read when they were a kid, because there wasn't a lot of access to reading material, but comics back then, were available. Spinner racks for a quarter a piece or whatever. Like, you guys know who Method Man is, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
His alternate name is John Blaze?
I did not know that.
Do you know who Johnny Blaze is?
Yeah.
Do you, Robert?
Yeah.
Okay. So Ghost Rider inspired, right? Eminem owns like 2 copies, I think, of Amazing Adult Fantasy number 15, the first appearance of Spider-Man. It's incredibly expensive, incredibly rare book. He owns 2 copies of it. Because obviously comics held a special place. He mentions comic characters all the time in his songs. A lot of rap stars.
I wonder if he's read one of them. Like, opened it up.
I don't know why you would when you can just get a reprint and read that. And
because
keep the
it'd
other
be so cool to open an original like that and read it.
Yeah.
If you own 2.
Yeah. Well, if you're rich enough to afford to, you might as well.
Right?
Yeah.
If you accidentally tear a page, you can replace it.
It literally didn't matter.
Yeah, I think that if I had something like that, I would have to see the insides of it. I wouldn't want to just stare at the cover behind plexiglass case,
Yeah, I can understand if you could only ever afford one in your life that you don't open it.
Right.
If you're rich enough, you can go blow money on 2 rare comics.
Should
Right.
I open
Still
it and
have
make
money.
sure it's the right book?
Yeah,
So I
there's
didn't
that
swap
too.
out a
Who
fake
knows?
cover. Maybe I'm just paranoid. But
Does it, like, say you buy some crazy rare comic that's all slabbed and everything for $10,000. If you crack it open and peek at it, does it lower the value to go reseal it, sort of thing?
Well, you would have to have it regraded at that point. So it kind of depends. I mean, if you're a careful enough reader, all that, you can read something and keep it in the same grade it is. It's a lot of wear and tear that happens on comics, especially something at that age. A lot of wear and tear that happens on comics is from mishandling. So, obviously you can do it without damaging the book, because otherwise how do you properly grade a book?
True.
You grade a book by opening it up and going through it. But, you've seen me when I'm grading and I got my gloves on and all that, There's a reason for that. And I'll catch myself sometimes reading it while I'm grading it. It happens because, pictures are right in front of you. The words are right in front of you. So it's what you do. So there wasn't any real exposure that you noticed when you were a kid.
No, didn't have it.
Okay. How did you get introduced to characters like Spider-Man, Wolverine, Superman, Batman?
The old Saturday morning cartoons.
Okay. That's like when the Spider-Man movie came out, you already knew who Spider-Man was because of cartoons?
Yeah.
Okay.
Heck, we even went to see that one in theaters. That first original Spider-Man, that was good.
Yeah, I took my little brother and his friend to see that in theaters, and my wife went into false labor that night.
Fake labor.
No, well, it's kind of the same thing, fake labor, false labor, but she was having Braxton Hicks, and they couldn't find me. They knew that I went to the theater, but they didn't know which theater. So, yeah, that was pretty fun when I got home, and no, she's not supposed to go into labor for 3 more weeks. She said I could go see Spider-Man.
And these were the times when it was a lot harder to get a hold of someone.
Right. Yep. So apparently my daughter wanted to see Spider-Man too. But, okay. Go ahead, Levon.
I'm 25.
Okay.
So, not much of a difference between us.
No.
I believe Thriftway may have sold comics when I was little.
Thriftway sold Wizard.
Okay. So Wizards, I know that I did pick up at Thriftway.
Okay.
Comics, it might have been Safeway. It was just Modern Spider-Man at that point. So that wasn't the first experience buying them, but that was the first time seeing them around here.
Okay. Safeway had, and they would have had it when you guys were younger, they had the Spider-Man magazines.
Right.
They had comic reprints in them.
Yeah, so the ones that I had were the Spider-Man books that came out after the Tobey Maguire movie.
Okay. So you're talking Ultimate Spider-Man? Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, it was Ultimate Spider-Man and the Nuff Said series.
Nuff Said was just an event that they did for 1 month.
Right. So I had the 3 Spider-Man Nuff Said books that came out right after that.
Okay. And that was when they challenged all the writers at Marvel to write one comic for 1 month that had no words in it. It's kind of stupid, honestly.
Yeah. But we were going to Things from Another World when I was 5. So that's probably my first exposure to comics.
Why were you going there when you were 5?
My dad's a collector.
Okay.
And not comics, but toys.
So your dad was going to comic shops, so you went to comic shops.
Yeah, he would take us in there so he could go look at whatever collectible toy he was looking for. We'd go into Dr. Tongue's in Portland.
Dr. Tongue's?
This guy was awesome. It's just this weird little store. It's probably no bigger than this bedroom.
Uh-huh.
And they had a full-size Cookie Monster prop in it, and a whole cabinet as long as the wall that was just Japanese kaiju monsters, weird board games and vintage comics and stuff.
Okay.
They went out of business maybe 10 years ago, and then I guess they brought it back about 5 years ago, but different location, different owners and stuff. But
same weird name.
Right. Same weird name, just different stores. But I think
I don't know if I could go into a place called Dr. Tongue's.
Right. That was probably the first time that I went to a comic shop. I don't personally remember buying comics when I was that little.
Uh-huh.
Until I was probably 7 and picked up my first Sonic comic at Fred Meyer's.
Okay.
And aside from that, everything else that we got was given to us.
So you do remember seeing Sonic at Fred Meyer's?
Yes. Yeah, I would personally go in there each month, and my mom would take us to buy them.
Okay. And Sonic is what you bought at that age?
Yeah.
Okay. Was there anything else that was on the shelves there that you found even remotely appealing?
Honestly, not that I can remember.
Okay. Because I do know they carried, Bart Simpson comics.
Yeah, I remember seeing Simpsons all the time. I wasn't allowed to watch Simpsons.
Oh, okay.
It was my mom, like I was telling you earlier. If it looked weird, then she assumed it was inappropriate. Even though, everyone else our age was into that kind of stuff.
Right.
But that's when you're sheltered and overprotected, so. The stupidest crap can be inappropriate to my mom.
Yeah.
But yeah, so Sonic comics are the first ones I personally remember buying.
Mm-hmm.
Anything else was given to me. So Ninja Turtle comics, Pokemon comics, those were all given to me by my cousins.
Okay.
They would go to the stores and buy them and then give them to us. So wherever they got them, I would assume some collector shop in Portland. Because they were all vintage.
Right.
Aside from the Pokemon stuff, but I know that wasn't stuff that you could get around here. So, not 100% positive about that.
Or it was stuff they had when they were younger, maybe?
The turtle stuff I know for a fact was given to me by my cousins because they had it previously. And then they would go out and buy some of the later stuff. Because it was like a weekly thing where my cousin would get paid and she would bring over a comic for us.
Okay.
The Pokemon books I know that she bought, I would assume from Things from Another World, because I think that's the only place that carried them at that point, because they're the manga translated comics.
Okay.
And even at that, I can't guarantee where she actually got them.
Yeah,
she
there actually
them online.
There are a few different places that carried them in that area.
Yeah.
So there used to be a baseball card shop that was by. Do you guys know where Harbor Freight is? Off of Oak Grove Boulevard. There used to be a baseball card shop right there, right next to the ice cream place.
Yeah.
That a guy subleased space that sold comics there, and he sold the Pokemon stuff. Actually, when he decided to quit, that was the first inventory comic-wise that I ever bought.
Yeah. Well, and I know
bought
there
his
was
entire collection.
There was a card shop in Oregon City, wasn't there?
There was at one point in time. I don't remember the card shop that was in Oregon City selling comics, but there was at one point in time 3 different comic shops in Oregon City.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
So go on, Robert.
Well, I was trying to think back to like, what was my? I remember the first comic that I personally bought, and that wasn't that long ago, 4 maybe 5 years ago.
Okay.
But I was trying to think further back, like what was the first comic that I can remember reading? And it would have to be I mean maybe there's something older, but the one that I remember, 7th grade. My friend, he was like, dude, I found this comic in the library. And it was Mouse. Is that how you say
Oh, really? Yeah. It's spelled weird, but it's just pronounced mouse.
Yeah, that was the first one that I read.
That's pretty heavy.
It was great. Like, I didn't really read.
It is a fantastic.
I was just amazed that we had
I personally
a comic
think everybody should read Mouse as a part of history.
I forgot about it. I haven't read it since the 7th grade. I'd go back and reread that.
Yeah, that's heavy for a 7th grader, though. Like,
well, it was the only comic that we knew of inside our
So
library.
did they actually teach you guys about World War II?
Library.
Did you have context for it at all, or?
I don't remember the context as to why he found it.
Okay. No, I mean, like, did you have context for things that happened during that time period?
Yeah.
By 7th grade? Okay.
Yeah, we knew as much as you'd teach a kid that young about it.
Right. So it wasn't just like the material just totally blindsided you.
Yeah.
That's basically what I'm asking.
Yeah,
okay.
I knew about the things that happened.
Okay.
And the Nazis and all that shit.
Yeah.
But that was it. And it was really cool. So I read it because I wasn't going to read one of these stupid books in our school library.
Fair enough. So you did have a minor exposing to comics from the library at your school then?
Yeah, that was surprising. I forgot about that one until now.
I don't think our school carried comics.
You went to Country Christian,
I went to Roldell.
Oh, at Roldell.
Yeah, Country Christian wasn't until high school.
Okay.
Roldell, we had a lot of magazines, but I don't think they actually had comic books. We did have stuff like Garfield.
Yeah.
That was where I was exposed to Garfield for the first time was school. And I would
the library out in Colton had like old dusty falling apart books and
the same books are probably still there.
Oh yeah.
Probably still there in all the libraries that we went to.
Probably. They had an unusually large collection of Stephen King books in that library. But I checked every square inch of that thing for graphic novels and could never find one when I was a kid.
I wouldn't have even known what that was as a kid.
Fair.
But my first book was, like I said, like 4 or 5 years ago that I actually purchased, and that was Batman Hush.
Okay, so Hush was the first one you ever purchased, huh?
Yep.
What made you decide on that?
Talking to Sean and Things from Another World.
Okay, yeah, he's a good salesman. I can see that.
Because he was like, "Well, what do you want?"
Anytime he knew somebody was new in there, he'd always ask that.
Yeah, and he's like, "Well, what do you want? Like these normal kind of superheroes, maybe something a little darker. Who do you like? What are you looking for?" I'm like, "Man, I don't remember what I said, but it's something like I don't know. I'm just looking for something good." I'd get something that you recommend. You know, Batman's pretty cool because he's kind of a badass.
Right.
He's a genius that makes his money work for him.
Yeah.
And he's like, well, he grabbed a bunch of stuff off the shelves. He's like, look at these, flip through them, and pick the one that you like, and just put the other stuff on the cart. And I'll put it back. And so I was like, well, this one looks pretty good. When you say, he's like, yep, that one's great. I'd recommend it.
Yeah, that's a good one.
He was really good at, like, narrowing down which way to go. He's a good person to choose.
When you pick that up and you read it, you obviously liked it, right?
I did.
Because I've never heard anyone say they didn't like Hush. Though I'm sure there are people out there who don't. Was there any desire after reading that to track down more Batman stuff? More Jim Lee stuff, more Jeff Loeb stuff, anything like that?
I did get some more Batman things, and then I didn't really spend a lot of my own money, so I read what Alex had.
Okay, fair.
You know, there's a lot of Green Lantern things, some Fables. Like that Dylan Dog. I think I got him to get Dylan Dog when I got my Hush.
Right, the Dylan Dog Omnibus?
Yeah.
Or compendium, or whatever they call it in that
I don't know what you'd call it.
But. It's an omnibus or a compendium. I just don't remember which word they added to it.
Yeah, but I really liked it. And Jim Lee's he's the guy that did Gambit, right?
Jim Lee was the co-creator of Gambit, yeah.
And then I didn't know that at the time, but from the old X-Men cartoon, he was my favorite.
Right.
And then you know, you gave me that little mini set.
Yeah, he didn't draw that.
No, yeah, I know that, but like I didn't have any of that.
Right.
So it became also became a thing of this guy made a character that I really like that I've never read before. So even if he didn't draw it, it's still someone that he helped make.
At some point, I still need to get the Fabian Nicieza Steve Scross Gambit series. I'd like to read that. It went for like 25 issues or something like that, and it came out in, I'm going to say, 99, something like that. But the artwork, Steve Scross is the guy who did all of the breakdown storyboarding for the Matrix movies. His artwork is really, really good. It takes a little bit of time to adjust to his faces because he does lips really weirdly. He doesn't do lips like anybody else, but he does action scenes really well. And Fabian Nicieza is probably the best writer who's ever handled Gambit. Chris Claremont's Gambit was really, really good, but the Gambit kind of came out under Fabian Nicieza a bit more, I think, because that's when he really started, the womanizing and the real badass type Gambit
that people think of now.
Yeah. Because, Claremont created Gambit with Jim Lee, and then I'm going to say he was only actually on this series for like 20 more issues or something like that, which seems like a lot. But when you have a cast of characters that big, it's not really developing any one ton, especially when there was like 3 major events that took place during that time, because the X-Men always kind of had their own little X-Men universe event back in those days.
Yeah, at the start there, it went from Batman and then whatever Alex had, and then I picked up some Flash.
Okay.
I started reading that stuff.
Yeah.
I like it, but then I started to move away from the superhero kind of things, because superheroes, they're cool, but they can be a little boring.
Yeah, I think eventually everybody starts sampling outside most people, anyway, start sampling outside the superhero spectrum. So, Levon.
Yeah.
So you collected Sonic the Hedgehog? What made you collect that character when you were a kid?
So, I actually didn't even know comics existed of Sonic.
Okay.
I played the games, and I had Sonic toys, and we would watch the cartoons. And I was 6 years old, I think. It would have been 1st or 2nd grade. I had a friend that I went over to his house, and he had a box, like just a little plastic Tupperware container that was full of the Archie comics.
Okay.
And I thought they were really cool. He ended up letting me borrow one of the collected trade paperbacks, like Sonic the Beginning, I think is what it was called.
Okay.
And I really liked it, so I ended up using the order form out of one of his comics to order it. So I got it in the mail, got it, and then the first comic that I actually went out and bought, I think it was like up in the 120s later into the series, and it had Mina the Mongoose. I know it was her first appearance, so it was like a white cover with Sonic and her on it. That was the first one I ever went out and bought in a store.
Okay.
And I guess for me it was just like I liked the art, I liked the characters. It was fun. It was entertaining. I already watched the cartoons and played the games. so there really wasn't anything keeping me back from buying them.
Uh-huh.
But, I mean, I had to have, like, that actual appeal of wanting to buy something when I was little to actually buy it. The first Ninja Turtle book, so that would have been my actual first comic period.
Right.
Was another Archie book. It was, I want to say, Archie Adventures number 28 and The Mighty Mutanimals number 1. So I was given those together.
The Mighty Mutanimals.
Yeah.
I remember that one.
I never got any of the other ones in that set. It was only like 3 issues.
And wasn't that the first comic that when, like, you opened up the front cover, there was a big, like, recycling sign, and it said that it was proudly made with all recycled paper. Yep. And the paper in that one felt really, really weird and, like, way thinner than most comics were at the time. It was just kind of
grody feeling.
Yeah, like, there was something wrong with that paper, and you're like, I don't know that I'd be that proud that it was recycled if it felt like this.
Right.
Yeah, oddly enough, that comic just randomly appeared in our car one day when I was a kid.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah, so I'm assuming, because I have tons of other siblings, that it belonged to one of my other siblings.
Yeah.
But I went to go somewhere with my parents, and it was just me, and I couldn't tell you why, because there's like 1,200 of us kids. But that was sitting in the back seat, and I'm just like, weird. I'll pick this up and read it. Oh my God, what's wrong with this comic?
Yeah, so those two were given to me when I was...
Just for reference, Robert, it felt like it was printed on something that was a combination of toilet paper and wax paper.
Yeah.
That's what it felt like to fill it.
Oh, that's weird. Not a comfortable feeling.
It's not a comfortable feeling comic at all.
Yeah,
it's
I still
really
own
weird.
That copy, and
they hadn't quite perfected the whole idea of recycled paper yet. But anyway, go on.
Right. So those two comics I was given when I was about 4.5.
Okay.
So that was my very first exposure to comic books, period.
Okay.
Aside from that, the only comics that I really bought at that point were... or only comics that I read were Turtles, Sonic, and Garfield.
Okay. So basically what I'm getting out of that, though, is that when you guys were growing up, comics existed at comic shops.
Right.
Occasional issues you might see at a library. And which was Mouse, so it's something that, you would think of more as being a library in a lot of ways than you would, most of the collected editions that exist today of like Wolverine or Spider-Man or anything like that.
Right.
And some issues at grocery stores, but really and truly only those that were made more with the kids' market in mind.
Right.
So, like Archie's line was still in the grocery stores, but you're talking specifically about Sonic the Hedgehog, which I think that actually is a big thing that's kept the character's popularity going for so long.
Yeah.
Is the fact that when all other comics left the grocery stores, Sonic is one of the things that stayed behind. So
yeah, clear up until Archie went out of business.
Archie didn't go out of business.
Well, but the Sonic branch.
Archie dropped the line.
Right, so when that happened...
I don't know if they didn't want the license anymore, or if they gave it up, or if IDW just bid more in the contract with them.
I think IDW had bid more from what I read.
Okay, but IDW's not putting it on newsstands like Archie did.
No.
And they really should.
Yeah, and that was only a couple of years ago, right? Maybe 2 years ago.
I think it was last year that they got the rights to
Sonic.
Yeah, because,
clear up until that point.
Because you were who were at Extinction of the World with me when they had like 10 copies of the variant they were trying to sell for $100 that they put on the bottom shelf. That was of the first issue IDW did. Yeah. So that had to have been.
Okay, so it would have been about a year ago.
Yeah.
I was seeing the Sonic Digests clear up until that point.
Yeah.
Like Walmart and... I don't think Safeway carried them. But,
Safeway carries them.
They do?
Yeah, they carry Archie
I would see those up on the registers all the time.
Okay. So, when I was growing up, they were everywhere.
Right.
Except for libraries.
The one place you can get them for free.
Right. So, through the newsstand lines, have you guys ever even been to an actual newsstand?
No.
I don't think so.
I don't think I've ever even seen one in person.
Do those even exist anymore?
They have to exist in places.
Well, in this area, though.
I don't think so.
Okay, so when you went to Portland when I was a kid, they actually had, like, legit newsstands.
Oh, we didn't go there when I was a kid.
Oh, okay. Well, the places that they existed when I was a kid, they don't exist there now. So I'm going to say that in this area, they don't exist anymore, right? But the name newsstand, that actually comes from actual newsstands, like you see in TV shows. I always thought those were cool to buy comics, and because it was like the closest you could get to buying books outside. So for some reason I like that. I couldn't tell you why.
No, it's great. It's like a food cart except for news or reading material.
But when I was a kid, like if you went to Fred Meyer's, they had a spinner rack there, right? You go into Century and there was a whole shelf that took up half of the magazine space that was all comics. And that wasn't just Marvel and DC. That was like Image Books. Ultraverse actually had a really strong presence there, which was Malibu's superhero line.
So that was a whole magazine shelf?
It was half of one.
The point that I was buying Sonic and Myers, it was just the very bottom of the magazine racks.
Yeah, so they had kind of been like clipped down. They used to be like, the magazine racks in this area at least, were kind of dual-decker things.
Right.
Like they have at our Safeway. And the whole bottom section of it was nothing but comics at Century.
Yeah.
So, in our area, Colton Market, they had them. When you went to Toys R Us, they had them, and then on top of that, they had end caps where they would take like 20 or 30 issues, and they'd be sealed in these weird plastic box things and sold as like value packs. It was comic value pack, and it'd be like 20 comics for $10, right?
Yeah.
So, as a kid, and you didn't know what you were getting. That was part of it. It was all blind bag. So as a kid, like, why the hell wouldn't you if you could talk your parents into giving you $10, right?
Right.
They were pretty much literally everywhere you went. If you went to a Dollar Tree, or they didn't have Dollar Trees back then when I was a kid, so, whatever the dollar store was, or the Big Lots type places, any of those, they always had the same sort of thing where it'd be like 3 issues blind bagged together in one bag. You bought it, and then you had to open it to see what the middle comic was. Oh, on this side is X-Force. On the back side is Biker Mice from Mars. But what's in the middle? I don't know. Do I want to spend $1 to find out? Yes, I do.
I remember buying those.
Yeah. So those actually still can be found in places. The weird thing is, though, is that they're all issues from, like, the 90s.
They used to sell them at, like, the dollar stores a couple years ago.
Yeah, so the places that actually package those, I think, have all gone out of business now. But it used to be a thing to where you could sell your stuff to them for like 20 cents a piece that you weren't selling in the newsstand. And then they would take them and they'd repackage them, and then, they could sell them to people that way, right? So, and if you were a publisher creating millions of copies of books back then, you might as well do something like that.
Right.
So, there's like one of those that I got Married with Children comic in.
Didn't know they did that.
Yeah, Married with Children. So now comics made all kinds of shit into comics, and that was one of them. There was like a mini series where Kelly went to college. It was fucking weird. There was so much weird shit in the 90s. They did a Honeymooners comic. I can't remember who published that one. But there was a Honeymooners comic done in the 90s.
Why?
I could see if that had been done in like the 60s maybe. But the 90s? It just seems weird, right?
Seems a little too late.
Right?
Comics were that popular at the time.
I guess it was kind of like the thinking that, hey, the Addams Family is experiencing a renaissance.
Right.
Maybe people will get back into the Honeymooners, too. But that's also kind of it right there that you just hit. There were so much shit being produced during the 90s that companies were willing to license just about anything to make into a comic just because they needed the additional material coming out. So, yeah, you're not incorrect with what you're saying right there, And that's something we can go into in another episode when we finally talk about the speculator boom. In any case, you could find comics pretty much anywhere. The only places I can think of that didn't have them when I was a kid that were stores were Meadowbrook. For some reason, they never carried them there. And video stores. That was like it.
Yeah.
Those were the only places that I ever didn't see them that were normal type of stores, right? Well, restaurants, of course, too. Although sometimes restaurants had, like comic action figures and shit like that. But, like Hardee's, they did the X-Men set, and Burger King did Justice League, things like that. In any case, that's what it was like when I was a kid. So you couldn't help but be exposed to them to some degree. And I remember as I was a kid, the first comic I ever remember purchasing was Double Dragon. So kind of like the same thing with you and Sonic.
Yeah.
I knew it from the video games. and I saw it in the store and asked my mom if I get it. I didn't even know comics had like a thing where new issues of characters that weren't video game characters ever appeared in these things.
That was a tough game.
Yeah, but I remember buying that as a kid and just being like, man, comics must be stupid because this comic, they didn't even play the video game.
Yeah, they don't know what they're doing.
Who are these characters? Who are these characters in this comic? This isn't a thing like the game. I was really confused why they fought people who looked different. Why it wasn't just the same looking person again and again. You gotta think I was like 6 when I got this comic, you know?
You just had revolutionary ideas then.
Yes, that's true. I did. The next one I remember getting was, so do you know about the Ninja Turtle fan club?
Yeah.
Okay, so I was a card-carrying member of the Ninja Turtle fan club, and I mean literally card-carrying. I had the card in my wallet. And
you were so cool.
I wish I still had that card, actually. But I got the bandana and all this, and when you got the welcome kit from the Ninja Turtle fan club, it came with bandana, and it came with a mini-comic.
A little mini-comic that's just like the origin story, but it's drawn like the style of the action figures.
Yep, it's an ash can. Yeah.
Yeah, I've been looking for that for so friggin' long.
I just sold my copy like a year before I met you. I had it clear up until then, and I went ahead and sold it because I found out it was going for like, I don't know, $30 or something, whatever it was going for. So, yeah, I was really confused by that one because that was all in black and white, and it was mini, and I couldn't figure out why a comic would look that way, right? But luckily for me, KB Toys came in handy because when I went in there, they had a whole spinner rack that was nothing but Ninja Turtle Adventures. So I couldn't seem to find Ninja Turtle Adventures at any of the stores, right? But KB Toys had like every issue that they possibly could on one spinner rack, and that's like all that was on their spinner rack. It was just Ninja Turtle Adventures. So every time my mom went to the mall, and my mom went to the mall a lot because she worked at the store there.
It was her job.
Right? It was her job to go to buy her Frank all the time. I would beg that she stop by and pick up Ninja Turtle Adventures. And then finally, one time I got lucky because I was really, really sick. And she picked me up like 10 of them. Nice. So I got a little bit more exposed to comics that way. And then a few years later, Willow came out. And I knew that was going to be the greatest movie of all time. So I convinced my mom to get me the comic adaptation. Of course, I didn't know that it was an adaptation back then because, you know, it was just the comic and that's all that mattered. And I read it, and I read it, and I read it, and I knew it was going to be fantastic. I read that thing so many times the staples started to fall out. But I already knew the story by the time the movie came out.
Wait. So the adaptation came out before the movie?
Yes.
So if you read the comic, you already knew what was going to happen.
So that's actually something interesting we can go into in later episodes. But nowadays, an adaptation lands within a week or so of the movie, one way or the other.
Afterwards.
Right. They kind of try and pair those up, right? Back then, the comics would be released months ahead of time to try and stir up interest for the movies. But the comics would differ quite a bit because they were created with the earliest versions of the scripts.
Right.
So if you go back and you look at the Star Wars stuff, which I think came out like a full year ahead of the Star Wars movies, they actually have a green bunny palling around with Luke Skywalker.
Yeah.
Because that's what the earliest version of the script had in it.
Weird.
Bucky O'Hare was actually created because of that green bunny in Star Wars.
That's pretty cool.
It's too bad Star Wars.
Where Howard the Duck came from.
It's really too bad that that green bunny isn't a part of Star Wars. I might like Star Wars more if it had a little green dude jumping around that wasn't Yoda, like a bunny, you know. Wasn't old. It's just a spacefaring bunny. Because I like Bucky O'Hare, so that would work for me.
Exactly.
But anyway, I got Willow, and then I didn't get comics forever after that because, or what seemed like forever as a kid, because the only comics I had any interest in were the properties that I knew and liked, right? So like occasional Tailspin here or there, or I think there was a Darkwing Duck comic back then that I got, but it wasn't until I was like, I'm going to say 12, that I ended up getting my first Uncanny X-Men.
Yeah.
And that's like what started it all for me, reading and collecting, right? But the point is, when I was a kid, comics were everywhere, right?
Yeah.
So now we're going to look at where comics are today. And that's going to be the main focus of what we talk about. for the rest of the time we have here, then it might spill into next week's episode too. In fact, looking at the time right now, I'm going to say it's for sure going to. So, where all can you find comics today? Go ahead and list them for me, Levon.
Oh, God.
List any of them you can think of.
Shop specific or just comic shops?
Okay, comic shops. All right.
Okay, so, yeah, comic shops. I occasionally see comics at Fred Meyer's still on the bottom of the racks.
Okay, so
It's
you're
maybe
talking
4 or
about
5
like
titles.
the Bongo. Well, Bongo is not in business anymore, so the Simpsons comics aren't coming out anymore.
Oh, really?
So you're talking like Archie, right?
Yeah, I do see a lot of the Archie stuff around there still. The
Okay.
standard comics and the digests.
Okay.
Barnes and Noble.
And
so regular
we'll just
bookstores.
stop there for a second.
Um,
The Archie digests are available pretty much everywhere still.
Right.
So, and Archie digests are now doing Marvel collections too.
Really?
Yeah. And these are the Archie digests, Robert, if you've never seen one before.
Oh, yeah.
Okay?
I know.
So, the Archie digests
Yeah.
that are available pretty much everywhere still.
Yeah.
The Archie standard size issues, which are available some places.
Right.
And then comic shops. Okay, go on.
Barnes and Noble.
Okay,
I don't know if I've been to enough bookstores specifically to know if they sell other comics at other places, but
some bookstores do, some bookstores don't.
Barnes
So.
and Noble actual like single issues,
Mm-hmm.
it's not a lot.
No, but they do have a sampling of single
Yeah.
issues, and they have graphic novels, and we are talking about
Right.
comics overall, not just
Yeah.
stapled together 32-page books.
Yeah. Some places like Walmart, I occasionally see them.
Okay?
It's very, very limited, and
Mhm.
it's generally just the trades.
Okay.
So
Let's pause there for a second,
Okay.
because over the last few months, Walmart has been doing DC 100-page giants.
right.
And they also do these 3-packs that are similar to what we were talking about earlier with the blind bags, where they reprint stuff from the new 52, and that seems to be all they reprint, as far as I've seen.
Yeah.
Where they have like reprint editions of the Scott Snyder Batman #1, and then the other issues are blind bagged in with it. But it's got kind of a high price point. It's like $10 for that or something.
Holy crap.
Yeah, the 100-page giants are $5, $4.99.
Yeah.
And they actually have quite a few of those. There's a Batman family one, a Superman family, Swamp Thing, Teen Titans. Might be another one. Those are what I can remember right now. They're 100 pages with 10 pages of new content, and then 90 pages of reprints, and mixed in with them is also house ads. So I've not seen a single outside advertisement in those yet.
Right.
They have house ads for where you can find the graphic novels and all that kind of stuff. And then in the very back, there's an ad for comic shop locator service. So anyway, go on.
And aside from that, the only other place that I can personally think of off the top of my head would be clear up until they closed Toys R Us.
Okay.
They did have a very, very small amount of comics.
Okay. What about
generally
you,
on
Robert?
top of the sewing machines.
Comic swaps.
Okay, so comic conventions.
Your house.
My house. Okay, very good.
Libraries.
Okay, libraries are good.
That's about all that I can think of.
Okay, so you guys don't know about these then?
Oh, we
Skylanders.
did talk about that.
Okay,
yeah.
these are not just Skylanders. What these are is they're little tiny comics that are available. Go ahead and take a look at it.
Are these the things you talked about?
They
about being
are
a
the
binary?
IDW fun packs.
They sell them at like
And-
Walmart, right?
Yeah, they sell those at Bimart, and a lot of places that have like trading cards still have those in the trading card section.
You
As
know,
you can
yeah,
see, they're
now that
not
I
a
think
whole
about it, I
lot
think
bigger
Target
than a
has
trading
them.
card.
So like
the
Fred
quality
Meyer
on
definitely
those-
would have them then if they're in there.
They probably have them.
I'm pretty sure I saw them at Target.
The
2
quality
weeks
on
ago.
those is actually pretty good, though. As you can see, it's got a
Yeah.
nice thick stock. They aren't cheap, though. For one of the little packs that has one of those and a little standee and a poster in it, it's like $3.99. So it's not what I would consider to be cheap,
Right.
but the kids do seem to like those. Now, the thing
They
is
definitely look nice.
when you see those on the shelves, I don't think there's anything about those that scream comic.
So you want to know my opinion on that?
Yeah.
It doesn't have an IDW logo on the front.
Okay.
It doesn't have a number or a barcode or anything saying it's a comic.
Okay.
Now that I know what these are,
Uh-huh.
I know that they're comics.
Uh-huh.
the turtle ones that you're telling me about that we looked on eBay a couple weeks ago.
Yeah.
I've seen those in stores before.
Uh-huh.
And I thought they were the little tiny coloring books.
Ah.
Because you can buy the bags that have like maybe like a standee and
yes,
a colored pencil and stickers
that you commonly get at the Dollar Tree.
I thought that was a sticker pack or a coloring book.
Okay, that makes sense.
Unless I saw the IDW logo on it, I never would have thought those were comics.
Yeah, I think that's actually a big problem with those, and I don't know if they're still making these or not. I know that our Bi-Mart locations still have these, but I also know that our Bi-Mart locations still have Nintendo DS games.
Yeah.
So I'm not entirely positive if these are currently produced, if they're still producing them, if they're still distributing them. I don't know anything like that.
Hell, they had PS1 games 5 years ago.
Goodwill.
Yeah, you could find comics at Goodwill, but I'm specifically talking about newer stuff.
Oh. Maybe High School Pharmacy, because when you walk in there, it's like flashed back 20 years.
No on High School Pharmacy yet, but
it still feels like you walked back 20 years.
They're slowly starting to up their game with getting new products because, like, for the last 10 years, it's been crap from like.
Well,
15 years
I
ago.
shouldn't talk any shit about that because my stepmom is one of the PICs for High School Pharmacies Corporation.
Oh yeah, and I'm not shit talking them. So this stuff, like, I mean, I was going in and buying action figures that came out 5 years ago.
Yeah.
And just now, like, recently they started selling, like, Funko Pops and stuff like that in there.
Yes.
But it's such a small amount of that kind of stuff. Like, they have their little tiny rack of trading cards, and then they have a toy aisle.
Right.
And they have magazines, but I've never seen comics there. I don't think I've even seen Archie books.
No, I don't think so either. So, you guys also, are you neglected Kickstarter?
Yeah, I was thinking physical places you can walk in and get them.
Yeah, but let's talk about all the places you can get them. Comixology, Comics Drive-Thru, any of the digital download places.
Right.
Amazon. I'm not going to count eBay because you can put whatever you want on eBay. But I'm including things. You can, but Amazon's different because you can actually pre-order it directly from there.
Oh, okay.
And I don't know who Amazon orders through for distribution. So I don't know if it's Diamond they're ordering through, if it's one of the book trades, or if they just have their own deals with comic publishers. So I'm including Amazon just for the purposes of that. Those are kind of the main, and Amazon you can also sell PDFs of your book on. So I can sell a digital version of my comic on the Amazon Kindle platform.
Right.
So those are kind of the places that you can kind of find comics today, right?
Yeah, hadn't really thought about the digital market of it.
It exists, and actually, that's something I want to go into with these podcasts. The last time we talked about pricing, Levon had said something very bizarre, and I was in the middle of something, so I just kind of glazed over what he said, and now I want to go back to that. You had said in one of our previous podcasts, we were talking about pricing, that people wanted things digitally.
Right.
And you're talking about comics. Why would you think that?
Personally, for me, it's just because the amount of places that you can physically get it, I've seen have declined.
Okay.
And being someone that hangs out online a lot and reads forums and stuff, it seems like that's one of the things that people go to more.
Okay.
Because they would rather just get it on the digital file so they have a backup. And it might just be weird collectors.
Okay.
But I've read them where they're like, someone's like, I'd rather just have the PDFs because I can store them on my phone, I can store them on my tablet.
Okay, so you're talking about people who prioritize convenience?
Possibly. It seems like there's people, because like I said, I hang out on Ninja Turtle forums.
Right.
So there is a comics section.
Okay.
And it's probably like a 50-50, where there's the people that actually go out and buy them.
Okay.
Or I guess maybe not 50-50, but there's like the half that don't read them, or the quarter that don't read them, the quarter that buys them physically and collects them, the quarter that may pick them up, and the quarter that specifically only get digital.
Okay. I will say those numbers are not reflective of the real comic market, though.
Right.
Because real comics, the market overall, maybe 10% of your sales are digital, if you're lucky.
Well, are the prices different?
Not
Not
really.
by much.
Not when you're talking about Marvel or DC or stuff like that. So there were a lot of people, so like what Levon's talking about with collectors, there were a lot of people who seemed to like Marvel's initiative of offering a free digital edition with each physical copy you bought.
Oh, that's neat.
Which I myself was always like, why would I want that? If I buy one of your physical books, give me a code to get a free digital edition of something that I didn't just buy.
Right.
Like, give me a random freebie #1 issue that you've published in the last 6 months. See if I like something new, right? But then they started doing kind of closer to what I just stated. And people were up in arms about that because what I didn't take into account is that the collectors liked the digital edition because they could buy the physical copy, bag and board it, take the digital code out, and then have that so that their physical copy doesn't get damaged, right?
Yeah.
Not me, I'd rather sit there and read a physical good. And if I get a digital code, I want something to try out. I don't want something that I just friggin' paid for.
Yeah.
I mean, like, I would rather give me the code for the digital edition and a new comic than just a digital edition of the very thing I just bought physically.
Yeah.
I'd be more inclined to read a digital comic if I got something other than what I purchased.
Yeah.
But there's no way that I'm ever going to buy a digital comic for the same price that I can get a physical copy. It's, to me, that's a ridiculous price point.
The only place that digital seems to have taken off in a big way is Kickstarter.
Can you give your digital comics to other people?
It depends on the platform. It depends on the copyright protection on it. It depends on all that kind of stuff.
I mean, I'm talking out into something that I have no idea about, but that's a stupid ass copyright law. If I buy it, that's mine. When
I sell one of my digital books through my website, I just send the person a PDF afterwards. If they end up saving that and send it to 100 people or posting on a torrent site or whatever, I would prefer they not do that. But there's nothing I'm doing that's stopping them from doing that.
I think.
And Chronicles of Von Helsing does exist on torrent sites, by the way, but don't download it on one of those. I prefer to just have to give you a free copy than have you download it from a torrent site. I only sell mine for 99 cents though. So
yeah, that's better price point for a digital thing. If
I don't just look at it at what the money is. Who Will Save the World is more because it's a bigger length book. I'm actually going to be dropping the price on that though because it's been out for so long. When I'm looking at what I want to sell mine for, I don't want to price it more than I would potentially pay for digital good. And I'm not going to spend $3.99 on a comic that the cover price on is $3.99. I'm not going to buy that for a digital good. It's not going to happen. So, like with me, I don't want to price mine more than 99 cents because there's no way in hell I'm in. $1.99 is kind of the absolute tops I would charge, but I wouldn't want to do that because I don't want to friggin' spend $3 on a digital good. To me, that just seems stupid. So, yeah, that is interesting that you say that. I know a lot of people who will sample things digitally, but the numbers definitely don't support that reading is turning into a digital consumership,
I mean, there's plenty of people that love it and they prefer it that way. It's just, I don't like it. I don't like paying for something like that I can't actually hold when I could pay the same price and get it. And also, I don't like that I can't give it to you if I want to give it to you.
Yeah, see, that was the thing that really drew me, is I do have some digital comics that I read. Even just, like, fan comics that I've downloaded.
Okay.
I don't like having to zoom to look at things. I don't like having to... Because, like, my computer, like, it formats it so that it would be smaller than a standard comic book page.
Okay.
And it pixelates it, so I have to zoom in to read each individual panel. That might just be the program that they're putting their files up on.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a pain in the ass, and I don't like having to click to go back and forth. I had some of the digital copies of Ninja Turtles that they put up for free one year. And for whatever reason, it turns the page sideways instead of keeping it standard, up and down. And so you would have to literally sit there and go through the program and figure out how to flip it. I don't like that kind of stuff. An ex-girlfriend of mine, her mom only
So what you're talking about is mainly because someone has altered everything through probably some sort of proprietary technology like Comixology uses. not just where you have just a straight across PDF that you read.
Yeah.
So with the digital editions, we also need to mention webcomics, by the way.
Right.
But anyway, go on. Your ex-girlfriend.
Her mom only read on her Kindle.
Okay.
She would buy books occasionally, but it was very, very far and few. Because her view was, why would I buy a book that's going to sit on my shelf and take up room? Because they had so many when she could have over 3,000 books on her Kindle.
Maybe because those 3,000 books cost you $7.99 a piece.
Yeah, I'm not kidding, dude.
And
she bought that Kindle.
You could go to Barnes and Noble and find those books that are brand new for 20% off at least.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was only the stuff that she so say maybe she had a favorite author. Then she would buy a physical copy.
Okay.
Other than that, we had the Kindle.
And I have heard that from people where they don't want the physical, and it seems to be more prevalent with people who travel a lot.
Right.
So Jim Lee was being interviewed by Kevin Smith on Fat Man on Batman, and he had said that he primarily bought digitally because if he's in a hotel room at 3 o'clock in the morning, he doesn't need to go find some place that sells comics. He can just pull out his tablet, get on Comixology, spend a couple of bucks and read away. Right.
Right.
That makes sense to me.
Yeah, that is convenient if you're not going to have somewhere to store it. You're
great.
traveling around a lot.
And if you're on a plane or whatever, you don't want to herk around a big old book. You can just, buy a graphic novel on Comixology, and that's all good, and that's all fine.
Yeah.
And they do have some great sales sometimes. They came under a lot of fire a couple of years ago because retailers were not happy. Comixology was selling trade paperbacks from Marvel that had just come out, that week for 99 cents a piece.
Oh, it's a great deal.
Right?
I'd buy that digital comic.
Yeah. Well, it's 99 cents. Why not?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
and my, it sounds like I really hate them, and I'm just not a fan. But that's all. That being said, I listen to audiobooks. That's all digital sort of stuff. It's not like I'm listening to it in the car with a physical copy of all the CDs. And I own a Kindle too. I have some books on there just because it looks good. And it means that I don't have to buy all the books physically, because sometimes you find a better sale on something digital.
When you're talking about audiobooks, though, you're talking about something completely different.
Oh, yeah.
Because with music, with audiobooks, with any of that, you're talking about something that inherently needed a delivery device from the get-go.
Yeah, but people still used to go get physical things and they'd have to listen to
They
them.
did, but with music, I need something to enjoy the music. There's never been a point in time in the history of music that I can just sit there and pick up a cassette, a record, a CD, and it'll play itself for me. I need a device to do that. With comics, there is no device to do that. The comic is the device.
True.
So, it's different in a lot of ways. But that's just one way that the experience of it is very different.
Makes sense.
We got 54 minutes already. Should we stop and do the second episode next week? What do you guys want?
I think that's a good
time-wise?
spot to cut off, just because if we keep
unless
going...
you got some other final thoughts about this whole digital thing.
Okay, about digital specifically, I don't at the moment, but I've got a whole lot more that we need to cover just in terms of Kickstarter, bookstores, comic shops. And one of the questions we're going to be getting to next week is I want to know more about how you guys find out about all this different shit.
Okay.
Because I know how I do. I'm listening to YouTube comic shit all the time. I'm always reading comic trades and stuff.
Like how we find out about new comics coming out?
Yeah, I want to know. That's part of what we're going to be covering with this 2-part series is how you guys find out, how do you find out about something that you're going to back on Kickstarter? How do you find out about something you want to go pick up from Barnes & Noble?
Yeah.
The comic shops.
I could answer that pretty quickly.
If you can answer it pretty quickly, then go ahead.
New comic things I find out from you. I don't really go seeking that kind of thing out.
Okay.
As to what new thing is coming out. Kickstarter, I don't really go on there that much. Every once in a while.
All right.
I've only ever backed your stuff because I'm like, nope, not for me.
Okay.
For most things. That's about it.
Fair enough.
Social media.
So I'm your main.
Yeah.
Okay. Fair enough.
Yeah, so for me it's social media, forums.
Okay.
And when it comes to social media, it's generally because I like the companies that publish the books that I read.
Okay, so you follow the companies?
Yes.
And they post about something?
Stuff that's new that I don't know, like say something that's not IDW Turtles, something that's outside of that I wouldn't have known about.
Uh-huh.
Generally is when other people post it and I see it.
Mm-hmm.
Aside from that, unless I go into a store and see something, I really don't know about a lot of the newer stuff that's coming out.
Okay.
Unless it's specifically something that I'm tracking down.
Okay.
So really, this question on the next episode will be answered mostly by you as to
and I'm
where
fine
we
with
get
that. I'm fine with that. But I want to do a deeper dive into this kind of stuff that we have laying on the bed. You know, the digest editions, the little tiny mini comics IDW is doing, comic shops in general, some of the things that I keep hearing about comic shops, because one thing that's kind of confounding to me that I was talking to Levon about before you got here, is I was listening to this interview earlier, and it reiterated this sort of rhetoric that I've been hearing a ton of lately, that comic shops are not friendly towards women. And that's something I want to do a little bit more of a deep dive with you guys, because I'm curious what it takes to make a store friendly towards a woman. I asked 2 women in my life, and they were confused by the question. So that's something I kind of want to deep dig into, and why exactly so many comic professionals seem to think that comic shops are not appealing to women.
I'll do some asking around, because
I would appreciate that, because I'd like to have some information for that one going in, because comic shops are what I want to talk about. Bookstores that carry comics, what I want to talk about. I want to talk about all the various places that you can find them, what the benefits of each are, what the negatives of each are. You know, that's kind of stuff that we're going to be covering in the second episode. This episode was primarily just setup, I guess. So, you know, sorry about that. Hopefully it was still worth listening to. So until next week, Adam Watson,
Robert Diaz,
Levon Baker.
Thank you for listening.